Let's talk about the plague.
Yes.
I know you got some things to say.
Mr. the Plague.
Check this out. Squirrel tests positive for plague in Colorado. This is from May 19th.
And I'm really glad the squirrel went in to get tested because, and if you're a squirrel, make sure that you tell your friends.
Listen. If you have squirrel friends that are feeling ill, please
Don't be
make
embarrassed.
them go get tested.
Nothing to be ashamed about.
We never know. Actually, you know how they're finding out? Because there's droves of squirrels dying, and they're like,
no.
this is weird. And then they were like, yeah, we should test these squirrels out. And that's exactly what they've done. So
nuts.
it turns out this is happening in Colorado. A squirrel in Colorado tested positive for plague last week. The Colorado Department of Health, Public Health and Environment says it was in El Paso County. CDPHE sent out a news release on Tuesday about the situation and included a reminder that the discovery of plague in wild rodent populations at this time of the year isn't uncommon. So wait a minute.
Kind of weird, right?
I read that and I was like, really?
Bubonic plague is normalized? We're normalizing bubonic plague?
It turns out the bubonic plague, the black plague, the famed plague of our past, it's been in Colorado for like 70 years.
Yeah, which is weird, right?
This is a normal thing. It's weird, isn't it?
Yeah, what happened 70 to 120 years ago?
Yeah, what brought it? I don't know.
Interesting, right?
I know it is weird.
Yeah, trains.
So this is this is normal. While we
trains.
see most plague activity during the summer, the disease can be found in rodents all year round and sometimes spills over into other wildlife species as well as domestic cats and dogs, says Jennifer House, the state's public health veterinarian said. Humans can also be infected by the plague. Oh, I knew that.
It's a sad truth.
It is treatable with strong antibiotics, but it is still best to be cautious in order to avoid getting it. Humans can be infected through bites of infected fleas or by indirect exposure, such as a cough, or direct exposure, like a bite, from an infected animal. An infected person or animal can suffer from high fevers, chills, headache, nausea, and swells of lymph nodes. The symptoms show up within 2 to 7 days after exposure. The CDPHE says 2 human cases of plague were reported in Colorado last year, and both patients survived. Both people have exposure to sick animals. The plague has been present in Colorado for at least 80 years. Oh, I thought it said 70. 80 years.
Yeah, it's like 95.
Must have been another article I was reading, but man, even worse. 80 years. It's just been around. It's just a normal thing.
Yeah.
Just something that killed a lot of people for a long time. Antibiotics.
Right.
Ain't no thing. So what were you telling me about Madagascar? So he's got the story about the plague.
I'll give you a couple. Let's start with Madagascar. So Andre Riolinga took over the country in 2008. It was a DJ.
Oh, recent.
Yeah. So a DJ took over the country.
Seriously?
Yeah, and it's awesome because what happened was Daewoo was buying 200-year land leases to just tear down and grow steak to give to Korean families and stuff. So Madagascar was like losing control of their country through neocolonialism.
No.
But then because the United Nations didn't like that a local democratic election had happened and they'd taken over, they locked out Madagascar from the international market. So all kinds of local people started cutting down their indigenous ebony trees, which is like really valuable wood. So they're selling it around the planet. It was really sad on its own. But the problem with that was rats that had bubonic plague that were living in the forest and hadn't been bothering anybody for centuries, all of a sudden were let out.
Oh.
And so everywhere, especially in the north, people started getting
plague.
Yeah, and it also was hitting injuries, which are the they're like lemurs and stuff.
Oh, okay.
But so people were getting like really, really sick. No one knew what was happening, and then villages were just collapsing. Hundreds of people dying, within weeks of each other. And it took a while, but people were like, okay, there was another plague outbreak in Afghanistan in the 70s. Same thing. Let's look into the bubonic plague, and the other one that's really crazy is 1905 San Francisco plague. The San Francisco plague is crazy.
Tell me about that one.
So I
think I've heard of this actually.
You might even want to look for a picture of San Francisco in 1905 just because of how insane this is.
Yeah.
Because San Francisco was like super advanced, looked like Manhattan today, had electric trains. I mean, it was like the future back then, and then they had to burn it down because everyone got the plague because there was a section of town that I think was out of the Chinese district, that on Sutter Street, that a plague kind of erupted. And yeah, basically they burned down most of San Francisco in 1905. There's also the earthquake of 1906.
They burned it down.
Yeah, because they were so convinced there was nothing else they could do to get rid of the plague. And people started burning the interior of the buildings, and then the stones would be standing still. But then the earthquake came the next year. So San Francisco was like completely wiped out.
Dang.
Like really bad.
That's rough.
But yeah, the plagues have been, we have plagues all the time, and we can probably do more about it. But the problem is also most of the time these plagues are happening in cities where people are they're not prepared for the rapid influx of new disease, bacterias and viruses and things that people carry in different places.
True.
Like you go to India.
Although I don't know, and I lived in New York for a long time. Sorry to cut you off.
No,
I want to say on that point before you move on. It's like I lived in New York for a long time.
Yeah.
New York is gross.
Yeah.
It is dirty. It's disgusting. It's greasy. Like going through the subway system, I feel dirty.
But I love her.
Don't get me wrong. I loved New York. New York is not the same. No. I moved to New York almost 20 years ago. All right. And New York is not the same place. I left New York about 6 years ago. And when I left, everything was closing down. Mm-hmm. It was just, you saw Starbucks everywhere. And
honestly, it seemed a lot cleaner last time I was there. Yeah.
I mean,
but
it doesn't matter. Look, on your point, though, is that cities aren't expecting new things to come in. But in reality, it's like, I feel like if you live in the city, you're breathing disgusting air. You're touching and being around dirty environments. You're almost better protected against. I say protected because your immune system's actually getting hit with all this all the time. So it might be stronger.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are. So you think of George Carlin, and he's like, you know why I didn't get sick from polio? Because we swam in the sewers. We didn't have these rich kid pools. But, the other thing is you've got a lot more people living in the city. And some of those people are bringing more intense diseases. And also just like the crazy influx. Like when the story of the bat soup thing, it makes more sense in a place like New York City than almost anywhere. Because,
that's true.
Because that's where the influx of like flying and these different ingredients that have been sitting in the melting pot aspect actually makes a city a more likely place for a plague to erupt.
Maybe that's why the Democrats were like, no, go down to Chinatown and, really, just go out and treat yourself. This is Nancy Pelosi, obviously, last year, early 2020, when everything was hitting and they were trying to blast Trump for being like, I'm closing down the border, we got to be aware. And they're like, no, he's xenophobic, go downtown, everything's fine. De Blasio's like, yeah, go spend a night on the town, it's fine. Maybe they were actually trying to help the citizens. Maybe they were like, let's get them exposed to it so that they'll be stronger.
Yeah.
You think that was the case? Maybe.
I'm
trying to maybe give them a benefit of the doubt. Maybe they were actually trying to help.
I think a lot of the time, though, getting people together, seeing different disease, like, Wuhan's like the Chicago of China. Like, it has like a big city aspect with lots of interesting people and food. And like,
but it's not like the famous city.
I wish it's some people would think so. It's not the famous.
Sorry, Chicago. I just called you not famous.
Well, but yeah, Chicago is famous. But for other things,
compared to New York, though.
Yeah, but like there's certain things.
Chicago's pretty
There's
big,
certain things about Chicago I want that I wouldn't want from New York.
Funny enough, Chicago is like the rat capital of the states. Did you know that?
It makes sense.
Yeah, they got a serious issue with rats, so much that they've just released like thousands of cats out into from all their shelters.
Pied Piper.
No joke.
Mythology.
They now have jobs specifically for cat caretakers, and they live in these. I don't know. They made homes for them and just have different locations around the city to try to curb the rat problem.
Well, this is, that's another way.
Nice job, Lightfoot.
That's
She's
funny.
got her priorities.
That's another way plagues erupted, right? Like the 15th century dancing plague was because rats were finding their way into grain stalks, and they were doing it because cats would be used to swarm them up.
Oh, you were telling me about this, but why were people dancing?
Okay, so the ergot mold, apparently there was what LSD is made from ergot. There's certain kinds of molds that were developing, and the people were eating it were getting mass hysteria.
No way.
It was basically like they were tripping
while they were dying. It was like a tripping plague.
Yeah, tripping plague for
sure. What a way to go out.